I can't wait for the opportunity to go running all the way back. You got any arrows for me, buddy? Nope. Probably open up a barrel along the way or something. We could really use some arrows. Could always use some arrows. I think you got one barrel here. Anything in it? Of course not. Any more barrels? I could really use more arrows. Can never get enough arrows. If I carry around expansions for anything, and I almost never do, the only thing I really feel is worth it is arrows. Because these things, once you have the bow, are extremely useful. In pretty much any situation. Like, most of the items in this game are pretty situational. I mean, bombs are probably the most effective for anything, and considering that they stay in place and take so long to go off, it's really saying something. So I can kind of see why they took so long to give you the bow and arrow. It just would have been really nice to have earlier on. But what are you gonna do? So we have a squid carving. We have to put it in again. I always forget the orientation for these, but I do seem to remember that the eye needs to be forward. So there are only two possible ways for it to face when you remember that. The problem is, if you remember how this ship is laid out, there really isn't much room in here for a boss fight. It's just another room. So where exactly are we supposed to fight a boss? I think this ship's going down. Now you can either use the Skyward Strike to get rid of these things, or you can use the bow and arrow. I prefer to save my arrows if at all possible. But they'll start sending barrels down after you, and as we progress further up the ship, more of it's going to sink. Now, when you get to this point, you think, holy crap, this is an interesting boss fight. This entire place, granted, it's been tedious as all get out, but everything we've faced up until now has been a really unique concept for a dungeon. And considering everything we've been through, to be attacked by the freaking kraken as we're making our way out of the ship. Like, you go into the room, opening the door, expecting a boss fight, and instead you find that the ship is being attacked and is being dragged to the bottom of the sea by whatever's probably going to kill us. You think this has got to be the most interesting concept for a boss fight we've ever seen. It's just so menacing before you even get outside to see what it looks like. It's tearing apart the dungeon we've been lost in for the last hour or so. And it's almost killed us before we were able to get a look at it. So you're just left with so much suspense in terms of what's waiting for you outside this door. And just like the dungeon itself, it's pretty to look at, and the concept is pretty incredible and unique. But when you get a good hard look at it, all you can do is just shake your head. Meet Tantalus. Oh, what this boss could have been. Could have been such an incredible boss fight. Scary, menacing, intimidating, frightening. I swore I hit you. So again, it's similar to what you were doing to get rid of his tentacles in the ship. You can either use a Skyward Strike to get rid of them, 4 shots will do it, or you can use a fully powered bow. I prefer to save my bow and arrow shots just in case I need them. Shoot the guy in the eye a couple times. He'll come down. Slash away with the sword a few times. I think you're only able to get 5 shots in per phase, and I somehow knocked one of his tentacles away. Yeah, how about that? So just lather, rinse, repeat. You can use the bow and arrow for this phase again, but I don't like using the bow and arrow. And it goes without saying, you don't want to get caught in his tentacles as you're walking around. So just move around if you can, try not to stay in the same place for too long. Or walk onto his tentacle as it's coming after you. You can break free if he captures you. It is a pretty interesting scene if he does. But just try to run around, not stay in the same place for too long. I don't know if that counted. But another problem with the camera, if you walk around too much and you stay in the middle, you won't be able to see what's behind you. So some people just like to camp in the corner and then fire at the tentacles with the bow and arrow, which is probably the best way to do it, if you don't mind wasting the bow and arrow. But for what this boss was built up to be inside the belly of the ship, with it crushing the plate, it literally tore the ship in two. You can see the other part of the ship in the water sinking across the way. So what they built this boss up to be, it's just disappointing to see what it actually is. Was that not the same pentacle I just hit? Now I think you have to hit it with some horizontal strike in order to knock it down. And you will get tentacles coming after you from underwater if you're too far to the side. So you have to see the tentacle break off and turn black before it actually does him damage. But for what this boss was built up to be, it's a pretty big disappointment. Maybe a second phase will be more interesting. Crate falls down. One of the most challenging parts of this boss fight is not getting hit by a barrel in this phase. Then we make it back up to the part of the ship we weren't able to see. Has the symbol for Nehru on it. In this part, if you're able to get a charged shot in, you can reach him before he starts attacking you. And then you can back off a bit. He'll start sending the tentacles on his head after you. So you just want to try to swipe away at these things until they're done attacking you. And then, when you have a chance, pull back the bow, fire at his eye before they start attacking you again. And then just swipe away at his eye one last time. I don't know why they chose such a silly design for this boss. There was so much potential to make it far more intimidating than it was. But a boss is a boss, and a dungeon's a dungeon. How about that? So this thing was right... Actually, before we do this, just look around. The entire bottom of the ship is missing now. The other half is just floating in the water. I'm not sure how the time shift stone is even still active. I guess it's still floating there, but if it sinks to the bottom of the ocean, then what's going to happen to the sand ship? See, it's torn to pieces. That looks like it might be Skipper's Retreat out in the distance. Just looking at the wreckage here. It's just so much to take in. I just can't help but feel that there was so much more potential for this dungeon. And I really wish I liked it more. But that's Linnæra's Flame. Beautiful thing. Well, we've seen this story before. Not all that helpful, but I'll take it. Every time. That's wisdom. So we got one more flame to find.